Take two. Hi folks, welcome again. Mr. Deep here, and I wanted to talk about true love versus romantic love. And I think it's fair to say that most of us kind of believe in the idea of true love. I guess some of us deny it, but at least we'd like to think we believe in it. And even if it's not found very often. And I think there's that, I wouldn't say it's so secret, but that wish for, we all know how it feels to be in love. And, you could say some say a fantasy, but the idea of being in love forever with someone is something we kind of seek, I think, on some level. Now, in reality, normally what we see is the peak. We see the two people come together, infatuation, in love, and then there's some kind of breakdown. It's kind of like a honeymoon, and then you have animosity, or if you stay together, quite often you can have a compromise, and the animosity is out of love, and there can be a number of feelings like jealousy, hate, and all of the things that weren't there when you were in love, and on the other side you have a compromise, and that's where you have this, some people call it a mature love, but you sort of accept the differences, and it's kind of it wasn't what it was, but we still have something, and I guess the question is this kind of evident desire for this eternal or long-lasting in love just a fantasy? Is it just something that we're seeking that doesn't exist? And I'm of the view is I would say no. Surprisingly, I don't think it's a fantasy. I think it's actually a deep and ancient yearning, and I just think the problem is we've forgotten how to achieve or to solve this thing that we desire. And I would further say that man and woman in their current state are in a very fallen state from a spiritual, emotional point of view. And so what I see is you could say, very old, underneath all of the layers of superficiality, there may well be a divine impulse for this in love, but a fallen approach, you could say. So basically, with fallen men and women, which accounts for our generation and the one before and the one after, just generally a fallen state of man, which is how I kind of see the world currently. There's a desire to seek completion in another person, and I would say that there's two types of this completion. So, this need to be completed by someone. There's a false incompleteness, and then there's a true, almost spiritual type of incompleteness. And I'll get to the second one. I'll try to start with the first one. And basically, with the false incompleteness, it's normally stems from what I would say a undeveloped self, and this undeveloped self tends to seek a rescuer, a hero, some kind of godlike or perfect savior, someone that can be all, heal all, kind of do the impossible. And it stems essentially from the undeveloped self, so someone that hasn't really done the inner work themselves, and they're looking outside for the completion, which is a lot to expect, let's just say that much. So I guess this is a repeat, but I think most of us seek happiness, we seek true love, but the undeveloped man doesn't know how to attain it. So again, it's that same point, that these are natural and arguably what defines us as humans, but we've just lost our way in how to actually attain them. And we end up a bit like Mick Jagger, I can't get any satisfaction. When you put two undeveloped souls together, what you end up with is it's a lot to expect in the start. But what you end up with is very often a breakup or a breakdown, or, and this comes back to the compromise. You get the win, one loses, and we see this very often. Someone has to pretty much split themselves in order to continue this, and often wrapped in this is that fear of loss, fear of being alone. There's many different things. So it's almost like a self-sacrifice. I'll let you be you, even if I can't be me, in order that we can stay together. Um, and this is only really possible. This dynamic only really occurs when one or both individuals, generally both, have unhealed trauma. So they're willing to make those compromises with themselves because they're essentially blocked. But it's not so much the relationship. They're blocked very often from earlier emotional blockages, generally relating to childhood. And this tends to encourage these, I would say, unhealthy compromises where you pretty much lose yourself in order to maintain the togetherness. And okay, enough on that. That's a video in itself, that one. Okay. And I would like to add, to be fair, I think that there is an exception, and we do see it every now and again, and it's where we have two people who are both broken, but together they're kind of fixed. And I know a couple in my own life, and respect, it does exist. The idea we should all aim for that is something I'm not sure is so wise. And what I would further say that, you know, there's more to life. And what I mean is that even if you find each other and you have something wonderful, this life is a test. We essentially, there's so much humans are capable and so much a couple are capable of that isn't about the material and necessarily just the family, but it's the spiritual. It's what we're here for, is waking up, is truly reconnecting with the divine. So for me, even a happy couple to me is like setting up your house at the foothills of the mountain when ultimately there's no better place than the top of the mountain. I think that is the right of every man and woman if they truly seek that. And as I guess what I'm saying is that we carry I've talked about this in other videos, even people who've done therapy and have healed their wounds, they still have this existential limit. In other words, they haven't really figured out the existential or spiritual dilemma that faces every man and woman on this planet. Okay, now we're going to move to the developed soul. Now, the developed soul are few and far between, I would say, to begin with. And I have done other videos, so you can look more at the bigger picture with my other videos. But a developed soul is, firstly, someone that has a healthy emotional center. And in our day and age, that means that you've healed your emotional trauma. Almost every child right now, without going into all the details, are carrying trauma that leads to an unconscious adult life, unconscious adult decisions. You do not know why you do what you do, even though you completely believe you know why you do what you do. It's an unconsciousness. And so basically a developed soul is someone who's worked through this and has a healthy emotional center. And it's someone who's spiritually awakened. Now, I've got other videos on this, so I'll just leave it there. One thing I would say, though, in regards to a developed soul, or you could say one of the traits or hallmarks, is the developed soul is someone who's in love with the divine. It's a spiritual love. It's a perfect love. And that might sound quite bizarre. How can you be romantically? It's not romantically, but it's an in love. And it's one of the hallmark signs of someone who's actually woken up, who's spiritually woken up or initiated, or I guess there's other words for this, but I like the waking up. That kind of sums it up. It's waking up from the sleep, which is life on this planet. And so that's a hallmark, is just this in love. And the cool thing about this in love is that it just continues to grow. It's almost like the very thing that one seeks in a relationship, but the one who awakes has this wonderful connection. And this person is not necessarily religious, I might add. In fact, I would say that religion in general can set up obstacles to an authentic type of in love that I'm talking about. It's a higher love, you could say. And And so here's where I feel it gets a little interesting, because if you imagine a spiritual person, a developed soul, um, you can be spiritually complete but romantically incomplete. In other words, still single but in love or connected with the divine and having this very special love relationship. Um, so the spiritual man, such as this, is in divine love, you could say. And what I would add to that is that this it's a self-sufficiency, so to speak. It's not that, okay, you have your monks and you have many different sort of groups out there where they reach this and they deliberately want celibacy, and they it's called the monk's way, I guess you could say. And we've all kind of seen there's kind of maybe bad examples of this, but there's some truly spiritual examples of this kind of life. And Mouravieff, the Russian writer, he regards this as the fourth way. In other words, the single self-sufficient man in divine relationship truly with the divine. But what Mouravieff talks about, he talks about the fifth way. And the fifth way is basically the union of two awakened beings, or awakening beings. And this is, he actually says this is another path again. So the fourth way is great and self-sustaining and self-fulfilling. But the fifth way is two healed and developed awakened souls combined. So Mouravieff says it's a union that's even greater, you can achieve even greater spiritual things than the fourth way man, the single way man. And what I find fascinating as well is that he says that there's many possible compatibilities with a man and their woman, or the woman and their man. But he feels that there's one, I guess you could say, soulmate. In other words, one, and he puts it mathematically, surprisingly, but there's one which is the one. But what he says, interestingly, is he says, now, I'll try to explain this. So if you can imagine that you have the ultimate divine and you connect with the divine, but let's imagine that the way you connect with your divine is some mediator. Some people call it the higher self, Christ consciousness. There's different kind of names for this. And we each have one. What he says is, when you find the one, that one that's awakening, the one you're destined for, he says that you share the same intermediator, the same higher self, which I just think is a fascinating idea and kind of inspiring in a romantic, spiritual kind of way. And it's almost as if you have this divine unity. It's like a trinity or a triangle. You, the other partner, and the divine, a triangle of sorts. And what Mouravieff says is that he says that what this is all adding up to is man has fallen, but this is the return of man. So you've got the split man and woman, then you've got the development of the awakening of the man and woman from their fallen state, and then ultimately the man and woman in unity, that is the full restoration of the fallen state of men and women. And so the goal, I guess, not everyone's awakened, but from wherever you are, the goal really is to find true love within. Now, I don't mean that in the superficial sense, oh, I'll just love myself. I'll love my egoic, unconscious, unhealed, unspiritual self. I don't mean it in that sense. I mean discovering divine love. And that means finding the divine in you. And that divine is essentially oneness with God. And what I would like to say in closing is that all of this love, I know it sounds very religious, but I was a church minister and a born-again Christian, and this is a higher order of love. It's a love with a complete understanding. It's a love where you are not so much just loving something out there. You're loving what's in there and out there and everywhere, and has a very specific personality and has almost chopped a part of itself that's placed inside a man or woman. And anyway, they're my thoughts, and I hope someone is helped in some way by this video. Peace.